Boss battles are the heart and soul of any game made by FromSoftware. Their latest, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, differs from the likes of Dark Souls and Bloodborne in many ways, but this is not one of those ways. This romp through Sengoku Japan is full to the brim with challenging fights against excellent designed bosses, who will test you to your limits. But of course, as always, some bosses are more challenging than others, and in this feature, that's exactly what we'll be talking about, as we rank all the main bosses in Sekiro in order of their difficulty, starting with the easiest and then counting down to the most difficult. Obviously, there are some major spoilers ahead. Also, note that this list is ranked according to our experience with the game. Your experience may differ, so please keep this in mind. Folding Screen Monkeys. The fight against the folding screen monkeys isn't so much of a fight as it is a game of hide and seek, as you seek out 4 different monkeys through a large area, with there being almost 0 chances of you actually dying, or even taking any damage really. You do get into combat with some ghost monkeys intermittently, but fending them off is easy enough. As far as actual challenge is concerned, this boss fight isn't really that difficult. Great Serpent. The Great Serpent's appearance lives up to his name in every way possible, but in practice, this is more of a set piece than it is a boss fight. Utilizing stealth and traversal techniques, your ultimate aim is to avoid getting hit and killed by the snake, to get to a place where you can deal a one-hit KO. This, too, isn't really that challenging of an encounter, but unlike the monkeys, if you do get hit by the snake while sneaking around, you actually take a lot of damage. The Dragon. If this list were ranking bosses based on their appearances, the dragon would be very close to the top, if not sitting on the perch. But the actual fight against this beast is incongruous with its intimidating appearance. The second phase of the fight does involve more of a challenge than the first phase does, but even then it's really mostly about grappling to specific points and avoiding attacks that honestly aren't that hard to avoid. GENICHIRO, Way of TOMOE. The final fight against GENICHIRO in Sekiro is also the easiest, mostly. That's down to the fact that in this encounter, GENICHIRO hasn't really changed things up too much from our previous fight with him. As such, you mostly know how he's going to move and attack, and dealing with his blows is made a little easier as a result. Some of his attacks also lock him in an animation for a couple of seconds, so if you can get around him while he's swinging, that gives you a good window to get a couple of solid blows in. Corrupted Monk. The Corrupted Monk can deal plenty of damage to you if she manages to land a hit, which means concentration levels need to be high constantly during this fight. But really, other than that, there isn't much else that presents a challenge. Her moves are slow and usually telegraphed, making them pretty easy to read, and if you can manage to avoid getting hit and go into the fight with some snap seeds, this is a pretty easy fight to get through, relatively speaking. GYOUBO ONIWA. The first real challenge in Sekiro as far as major boss encounters are concerned. GYOUBO ONIWA is pretty much the perfect introduction to how the game's bosses function. He's agile and he hits hard, and on your first playthrough he can actually give you a pretty tough time. Once you get the hang of things though, he's not that difficult to deal with, especially on repeat playthroughs, by which time you'll be significantly more comfortable with the flow of Sekiro's combat. GENICHIRO, ASHINA. The fight against GENICHIRO atop the castle is, like a few others in Sekiro, a bit of a challenge when you first encounter him, but with the benefit of hindsight and the knowledge of all the other bosses the game has to offer, he really isn't that threatening. Whittling down his health and posture is easy enough if you can get up close, while deflecting and dodging his attacks isn't that difficult either, since his moves aren't that hard to read. He gets some lightning-infused attacks later on in the fight, but even those are easy enough to dodge. True Corrupted Monk. The battle on the bridge against the True Corrupted Monk is harder than your first bout with her, simply for the reason that she has 3 health bars this time around, and a couple of new attacks up her sleeve. Her spin attack in the third phase can be pretty deadly, while the illusions she sends out now and again can also be cumbersome to deal with. That said, deflecting her attacks is simply a matter of getting the timing right, and avoiding her illusions is easy enough with snap seeds, or by using your grapple to zip around the tree branches above the bridge. Additionally, it's also possible to get 1 or even 2 stealth death blows on her, making the fight that much easier. Emma, the Gentle Blade. While she serves as a friendly NPC for a large chunk of the game depending on your choices, she can actually end up being a boss encounter, and a pretty solid one at that. Emma's attacks are erratic and hard to predict, and when she gets up close, she can let loose some furious flurries that require precisely timed deflections from you. She's also pretty deadly from a distance, which means that moving away to heal is also always dangerous, while closing the gap on her following that is no cakewalk either. Lady Butterfly. For many, the fight against Lady Butterfly is where Sekiro's bosses really start showing just how badass they can be. This right here is an unbelievably speedy boss, who zips around the arena of the duel so fast that landing hits on her to whittle her health down becomes an exercise in futility. As such, breaking her posture is the way to go here, which means you have to deflect and parry like a true shinobi, which is no easy task either because her attacks are just as quick and aggressive as her movement is. Guardian Ape. Oh man, this boss fight is truly the stuff of nightmares. Here's a giant ape that can throw poop at you, release poisonous fumes of literal fart, thrash about on the ground like, well, an ape, and leap over large distances with surprising agility to deal massive damage. The fight against the Guardian Ape is no cakewalk, but what makes this even more memorable is the fact that once you defeat him and cut his head off, the game lets you believe that you've made it through for a handful of moments, before the headless ape gets back to his feet, picks up his head, and then proceeds to fight you with a sword in hand for a final, even deadlier phase. Truly a memorable boss encounter. Great Shinobi, Owl. The fight against the Great Shinobi is one that does justice to his name, because the owl really does fight like a true and proper shinobi, dropping smoke bombs, inducing status effects, and raining hell down on you with a very wide range of attacks. Learning attack patterns is, of course, key in any boss battle in Sekiro, but doing so is particularly hard in this fight, not just because he hits hard, but because there are so many ways he can just beat the crap out of you. Guardian Ape and Bride. The Guardian Ape boss fight is a tough one as it is, but it's not the toughest encounter against him. No, we fight him again, and when we do, it's even more of a nightmare. It's essentially the same fight, but in a smaller, more enclosed space where avoiding his attacks is more difficult, while another giant ape also works alongside him to kill you at the same freaking time. The cause of many broken controllers, I would guess. ISSHIN ASHINA. Lord ISSHIN is the man who taught Emma everything he knows, so it makes sense that the fight against him feels like a tougher version of the one with the gentle blade. He's faster and more difficult to read, while he can also cover distances with deadly pace, making it not very ideal to want to back away to heal, just like it is in the Emma fight. In the second phase, he starts spewing deadly fire attacks at you, which can easily kill you in one shot. Oh, and if you die here, your last checkpoint is before the fight against Emma, which comes right before it, which is like the very definition of an unfair checkpoint. Owl, Father. This fight against the owl is even harder than the one we already spoke of, which is saying a lot because that one is pretty freaking hard too. The owl can break your posture pretty quickly, while his own can take a while to whittle down, which means cutting down his vitality is very important here, which automatically makes it a lot more challenging. You also have to deal with combo strikes, deadly swipes that can kill you in a single hit, not to mention an owl in the second phase that can do AoE damage, meaning that you have to deal with two nightmares at the same time. Demon of Hatred. Perhaps one of the most intimidating looking bosses in Sekiro, and unlike, say, the Great Serpent or the Divine Dragon, the Demon of Hatred actually does justice to his nightmare fuel appearance. Ridiculous hitboxes, a wide range of attacks, many of which can outright kill you in a single blow, and 3 health bars to whittle down, make him very close to being the single most challenging boss fight in the entire game. This is a fight that puts everything you've learned to the test, demanding extreme and constant concentration from you. One single tiny little slip up and it's game over for you. ISSHIN, the Sword Saint. Putting ISSHIN on top of this list was a very easy decision to make, because this is one fight that will see you dying for at least a dozen times. He has 3 health bars, and even during the first one, his fast attacks are hard enough to read and predict, but then he whips out a spear, which he wields at the same time as his sword. Not only does it do plenty of damage, because of course it does, it also gives him a fair amount of range, and reading and avoiding his attacks in a split second, because really that's all he gives you, is monumentally challenging. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, please hit the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to switch on the notifications bell icon next to it. That way you'll never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.